What do you need to look at within your Pinterest analytics? How do you know if you are experiencing good growth on the platform? And how can you improve those numbers so that you are experiencing month-over-month growth on the visual search engine? I'm Emily Bales. I'm a Pinterest marketing expert and coach. And for the past 4.5 years, I've helped my clients and my students increase their traffic and turn it into profit through the power of Pinterest marketing. And I have loved this past year in my business. I have really focused on helping other people start their Pinterest management business, which has been a lot of fun for me. So whether you are a Pinterest manager or you already have your own business and you want to utilize Pinterest, this video is going to help you understand Pinterest analytics. So in a few minutes, we are going to jump over my Pinterest account and we are actually going to look at my Pinterest analytics because I'm a very visual learner and I think it makes a lot more sense when you can actually see what I am talking about in regards to impressions, outbound clicks, saves. But before we do that, we are going to discuss a few more things, such as the number one thing you need to do before you can even look at your Pinterest analytics. So the number one thing you must do before you can start marketing on Pinterest, you do need to have a Pinterest business account. It's free and super easy to set up, and you can set up a brand new Pinterest business account, or if you have a personal account that you would like to convert to a business account, then you can do that as well. But if you're going to do that, you are going to want to make sure that you are going back and really optimizing your account for your business, because what you are sharing from a personal perspective is probably going to differ from what you would be sharing it for your business. But now let's get back to why you need to have that Pinterest business account. If you're going to market on the platform, Pinterest actually requires that you do have that business account. And once you set up that business account, it unlocks the ability to see analytics, run ads in the future if that's something you want to do. You are just going to have access to other helpful resources and tools. So now we are going to talk about some of the most important things that you are going to be looking at when you are analyzing your Pinterest data from month to month. Now, I also want to mention number 2, how often are you going to be looking at these numbers and really analyzing them? I actually only break down my stats for my clients, what I tell my students who are managing other people's accounts or other businesses' accounts, I should say. You're only going to be looking at those stats and really breaking those down once a month. And the reason for that being is because Pinterest is a visual search engine and it really takes time to see growth on the platform. So for people just getting started, I always say expect at least 3 to 6 months before you see significant growth. I know personally for my own account, it actually took closer to a year, and I had to get a little more creative with my tactics. Now, if you want to learn more about creating your Pinterest strategy, what your Pinterest strategy is versus those tactics, and how you can play and manipulate those tactics, I do have another YouTube episode all about Pinterest strategy versus tactics, and I would love for you to check that out, and I will also link that in this YouTube episode. So now back to those analytics. I really just dive in once a month, and that allows me to really get a better picture of what's happening. And I will say, if I've made a change, 30 days still is not enough time to see if that change really impacted my client's account or my own account overall. I like to give it closer to 90 days because once again, with the nature of a search engine, it just takes time for the platform to index your content, show that content to the right audience, and that feedback loop is just a little bit slower than it is on social media or other platforms. And I think that some business owners just don't understand that, so they feel impatient with Pinterest, or they feel that Pinterest doesn't work, and it just functions very differently than other platforms, which can also be why it is one of the best platforms in my opinion. It just serves a really different and unique purpose than other platforms. So now back to the things that we are going to be looking at when we jump into my Pinterest account. We're really going to be looking at your impressions. So the impressions are simply how many times your pin has showed up on somebody's screen. It shows absolutely no intent, that means they did not interact with it, they did not engage with it, they could have scrolled right on by it, they might have not even looked at it. So it literally just means it showed up on somebody's screen. Now, some of the other stats that are more important that we're going to be looking at are the number of outbound clicks. So that means when somebody has actually clicked on your pin, and not just clicked on your pin, but actually left Pinterest to go to your website, your lead magnet, your Etsy shop, your YouTube channel, wherever you are directing that pin, those are those outbound clicks. We're gonna be looking at the number of saves. So that means how many people have actually taken your pin and saved it to one of their boards. And side note, business owners, of course, the most important metric we are looking at are outbound clicks, because that's why we're using Pinterest. We're using Pinterest to drive traffic to our products, our offers, all of those things, our blog. But what the Pinterest algorithm sees as the most important metric is actually saves, because that shows a really high level of intent. So we don't just want people to actually leave Pinterest and go to our site, but we want them to save our content for later, because that indicates to the Pinterest algorithm that that's really high quality content. And when somebody saves something, they might want to come back to it later. They don't want to forget about it. And just because they're saving it, that doesn't mean that they're not also going to take action right then. But it's important to them, it's inspiring, and they want to, like I mentioned, come back to that for later. So those are some of the honestly most important metrics that we are going to be looking at when we jump inside my Pinterest dash. But one other thing I wanted to mention that I do as a Pinterest manager, and you should do this for your own Pinterest, and if you're a Pinterest manager yourself, you should be doing this for your clients. I really like to compare and contrast my Pinterest analytics to my Google Analytics. Now, this past summer, Google Analytics switched from Universal to G4. So then I had to go back to my signature course, Pinterest Marketing Magic for business owners. I had to go back to my Pinterest Manager Academy, which is my academy where I train people how to become Pinterest managers. And I had to update my lesson on Google Analytics. And that's because it looks a little bit different now since it has gone through that transition from Universal to G4. But what I like to do is I like to compare Google Analytics to Pinterest, because sometimes they actually differ in what I'm seeing. And you might not know this, but I really believe that Google Analytics is historically been more reliable as far as the accuracy of data, which is why I like to compare that to Pinterest. I do believe that Pinterest has continued to update analytics, what we're seeing, what we have access to in our dash, and I think that it's definitely gotten better, but I still kind of view Google Analytics as the gold standard. So I do like to compare and contrast those. Now, it's interesting too, because sometimes I will see Pinterest shows that things are up, such as saves, outbound clicks, and sometimes G4 or Google Analytics shows the opposite, things are down, and vice versa, where Google Analytics will show that your traffic from Pinterest is up, but Pinterest will show that your traffic is down. So then you're like, okay, who do I listen to? Which one is more, which one do I defer to? And just for your reference, I do defer to Google Analytics, but it is nice to kind of compare and contrast those two. Now, this is not the norm. I would say most of the time, if I'm seeing things are up in Pinterest, I'm seeing things are up in Google Analytics. And on the opposite end, if things are down in Pinterest, things are down also in Google Analytics. But I do think that it's just helpful to have that other platform that you can compare those analytics to. And I also really like to have this monthly report, because it's also helping me plan for better results in the future. And I'm gonna break that down and kind of show you how I'm doing that for my clients, how I'm teaching my students to do that so that they can plan for the future as well. And I think that this is going to be really helpful. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Pinterest, look at those analytics. I do want to mention I'm actually not going to be giving a full tutorial on Google Analytics as well today, because that could get a little bit long. So we're just going to be looking at my Pinterest analytics, talking about how we're finding those stats, where we're finding those stats, and I can't wait to share more. So let's go ahead and jump over to Pinterest. Okay, here we are inside my Pinterest account. So this is what it's going to look like when you log into your Pinterest account. What you're going to do in order to get to those analytics, you are going to click on Home Feed, and then you are actually going to click on underneath Analytics Overview. Now, from that overview, you are going to be able to look at those important metrics that I mentioned. You are going to be able to look at impressions, saves, outbound clicks, and those are the things that I am really focusing on reporting to my clients. So I'm not really too focused on total audience, engaged audience. Of course, we want those to build over time, but I don't pay as much attention to those. So you can actually, it's really helpful inside the dash, you can compare your impressions to, let's say, your outbound clicks. And if you want to see information about specific metrics, if you hover over it, it'll give you that definition. So for outbound clicks, the number of clicks to the destination URL associated with your pins. So that's also really helpful to see. Then you can switch out to saves. And this data, it obviously is helpful, but it's only going to become more helpful as you start to do this month over month. So in the beginning, if you are just getting started, that first month, we're like, okay, we have this baseline. So that's one thing I kind of wanted to mention. Now you can scroll down and you can actually see analytics for individual pins. So you can see which pin received the most outbound clicks. For me, it's how to increase Etsy sales. And for my number one saves, it's actually a different pin, is a pin that is a video pin about how to become a Pinterest manager and work from home. So I kind of wanted to just point this out. And so now I want to jump over to this Google Sheet that I've used in the past. This has been adapted over time, but it's just kind of a rough outline of what you could use for your own account, for your client accounts. And this is also what I provide for my students. So here is this Google Sheet. You'll see I have my Google Analytics. Like I said, I'm not diving into Google Analytics right now, but Google Analytics, the metrics are different. So you'll see users, new users, sessions is a big one. Then we have our Pinterest analytics. So here we have impressions, outbound clicks, saves. I do like to track followers and just see that that's growing over time. Followers is not super important, but at the same time, it kind of is important because one thing that Talon did that I just don't have the bandwidth to do, they surveyed tens and thousands of Pinterest accounts. And one thing they found from Pinterest accounts that performed well above average was a higher number of followers. So over time, if you are creating inspiring, educational, quality content, you should get more followers over time. So if you start out with 2 followers and you keep 2 followers for the next 6 months, that is a little off. So there's other ways too that you can also build your following. You can share your Pinterest on your social media accounts. You can share it with your email subscribers. You can give a call to action to follow you on Pinterest I used to do that in a lot of my video pins. That was the call to action, follow me to learn more. So, it's not something that I would stress about, but I do think it's important to see that that grows over time because that also should be some type of indicator about your content as well. You can report the most clicked pin. We saw on my Pinterest account, if we scroll down and went to top pins, we could see that. You'll also see here the type. It says organic. I wanted to mention too, going back over to Pinterest now for a second, at the top, you can filter by type of content. So this is important because I also run Pinterest ads for clients, and it is going to inflate their numbers when they're running ads. It can help them and give them a little boost organically, but also if you are combining that paid advertising with your organic, it's going to really inflate things. So if you want to look at paid and earned or just organic, you can do that. So especially with Pinterest management, it's kind of nice to make sure that we're looking at organic, because when you're managing somebody's Pinterest account, if you're not running ads, then that is organic. Or in my case, I have run ads for somebody who has an organic Pinterest manager. So they would want to be able to kind of filter out the paid from the organic to see like, okay, what is happening organically? So that was one thing that I wanted to mention. So jumping back over here, it is nice to have some places to note like what worked well this month. I know my clients really appreciate that, areas for improvement, and I would really break that down and I would get more into strategy. Like I mentioned, I do have another YouTube episode all about Pinterest strategy versus tactics. And then a huge piece here that I know my clients appreciated, I would always help them start thinking ahead for what they should be planning content on if they want to capitalize on those trends. Now, when you're thinking of trends, it's not just always seasonal, like holiday trends. You'll see trends in searches based off of just the time of year, obviously, and what people have going on in their life, and if they're outdoors more or whatever. So it doesn't just have to be based on specific holidays like Christmas or New Year's or Valentine's Day, but also like what is going on in the world, what the temperature is like in the world, and really what phase of life people are in. So it's important to always be thinking about those when you are planning your content. And I also like to tell my clients what blog posts, if they have a blog, or what products have performed well historically, because a lot of times that's an indication that they could create more content over that same topic. And obviously maybe, they're putting a different spin on it or sharing a little bit of different information, but something resonated with that or about that with their audience. And also it can be an indicator that, hey, let's create more pins over this content and try different angles and hooks because that performed well in the past. So of course, take this and adapt it. This is old. You can see that I have like 2020 in here, but the whole point is that you are looking at your analytics, breaking it down, thinking about what you could be doing better. You can see some of my things, like my outbound clicks are down a little bit. I always tell people, do not stress. The thing is with your analytics, they're gonna ebb and flow. Sometimes you have something take off, and that's something that I want to mention. When you do have a pin or something go viral, you can see sharp increases in your traffic, and it's fun in the moment, but when things come down, and what goes up must come down, it can kind of be a bummer because it'll look like the bottom kind of drops out. But you just have to know that when you see a sharp increase, sometimes it can be a sharp decline as well. So that's important to know. It's going to be the same thing if you're running ads. Sometimes you'll see a sharp increase, and then sometimes the bottom will kind of drop out again. But you kind of have to think about okay, overall though, am I improving over time? And I really encourage people, especially because Google Analytics, you just have a little bit more data. You can look at that year over year, and you just have more capabilities. So I find that that's really helpful to look at the year over year, especially if somebody is kind of worried about their analytics, or maybe if we've had a couple of months in a row where things are kind of going down. Before we get our panties in twists or get nervous, we just, try to get back to neutral and say, okay, what did things look like this time of year last year? Because I have had it where things maybe aren't looking as great month to month, but when we look at the year over year, their traffic is maybe up 50%, which is amazing growth overall. So that's important to note. Now, sometimes things are going down and it's not better than the previous year. And then that tells you that you need to take a look at what you're doing, your strategy, your content, and think about, changing some things. So I hope that this is helpful. I know that analytics can kind of be a lot, but when you're thinking about this, I like to create tabs at the bottom and just have month to month. And you're literally just writing down what your impressions, your saves, your outbound clicks were for February. What are they for March? Are my numbers higher or lower? Did they improve? Did they decrease? So those are, it's really just comparing numbers. And of course, though, thinking about what you were doing that achieved those results. Was it good? Not so good? So like I said, you kind of have to, revisit things if your numbers are going continually in a direction you don't like. So we are going to wrap up this episode, and I hope you found this helpful. Make sure, like I said, in all of my episodes, to let me know in the comments what questions you have. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. I think numbers tend to scare people, and I hope that what you realized when we were breaking down these Pinterest analytics today is that numbers don't have to be scary. They're so important and they're so helpful. And no matter how many times I have invested in my business through masterminds, through one-on-one coaches, you have to know your numbers. And that doesn't just go, for your business in general, but Pinterest as well. And if you want to see growth on the platform, then you have to try new things, test new things, give, those changes a 90-day runway like we talked about in the beginning of the video to really see if those changes are making a difference. And we all know the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, per Einstein. So I really want to encourage you to Look at those analytics, not day to day, not even week to week. You're gonna drive yourself crazy. Break those down once a month, pay attention to them, make note of changes you're making, plan for upcoming trends in advance, and I think you're gonna see really great results on the platform. I can't wait to see you soon in next week's episode. Be sure to also subscribe to my channel if you found this episode helpful. That really helps me grow my YouTube channel, come back week after week and serve you with the best content. So be sure to subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments what questions you have about this, and I can't wait to see you soon in next week's episode. Bye for now, friends.